ضيفتنا وزميلتنا في المجموعة الصحفية البرلمانية كارول ويرل رئيسة القسم السياسي في Sunday Express. Thank you very much coming here, Carol, from a busy day. The last day in Parliament today, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I mean, they'll be back briefly next week, and then we have the dissolution of Parliament before the election, which means there'll be no politics here in Westminster, but actually all the politicians will be going on the road for the general election.
We were just explaining to our international viewers in Arab world and North America and so on, the Purda period,
Yes.
which is silence.
Exactly. Basically, it means that the government is not allowed to use its advantage as being the government, the people that are running the country, in order to pursue their own agenda. So in essence, all those government announcements that we may have been expecting this week and next are on hold, and the entirety of the government disappears. They're all no longer ministers, they're all no longer MPs, they are just candidates in this general election, which means that they'll go on the road and bid to get the electorate to vote for them.
No good day to bury bad news.
No, exactly. Well, I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it? We often see it when we have terrorist attacks or other things.
Then
that
they
the
slip
government,
some news.
Yeah, that it's always a day to start looking out and seeing what the government's announcing. But obviously, they're not announcing anything. So for the civil servants in this country, it's a period of holiday for them. They can occupy their ivory towers here and not have to do a great deal of work.
On the good news and bad news, I mean, here we can see, if we can show our viewers on camera there, the election is about Brexit.
It is.
Now, she is hugging and kissing Juncker.
Well, this is becoming a bit of a theme, isn't it? We've also seen her holding hands with Donald Trump before, so
Yeah,
she's quite tactile. But Juncker, of course, is the enemy in many ways, and some
Yeah.
of the people would look at this and think, this is interesting, what's going on? And they had a working dinner.
Keep your enemy
last
closer.
night. Keep your enemy closer, exactly.
But is it a soft Brexit?
Well, it could be a softer Brexit. The noises coming out of Downing Street yesterday, of course, as you know,
Yes.
was that it was a constructive dinner that they had, and that she made an impassioned plea to him that she wanted to maintain a special relationship with Europe after we've left the European Union, which is, of course, something that won't actually take place for another 2 years.
Depends if he was sober.
Well, there are question marks there.
Or it was a good wine, then he probably might agree.
Well, maybe he did.
Well, speaking now on the our the TV debate.
Yes.
The argument here is we're not presidential system, we are parliamentarian system. Why should unelected TV bosses set the agenda?
Yes, and that's the issue. I mean, we've seen these debates around the TV votes before, in that David Cameron wasn't terribly keen on the notion of doing them only 2 years ago.
Yeah, but he did well when he didn't appear in the last one.
He did. And of course, the suggestion is always that the person who is the incumbent, so the Prime Minister, really has everything to lose from appearing in these debates. So why should they do it? The interesting thing about this time round is we've actually got Jeremy Corbyn as well now suggesting that if Theresa May is not going to appear in these debates, then why should he? Because essentially it then becomes a kind of debate amongst the opposition parties, and actually it's not challenging the
Which
views
is
of
learning the trick.
Exactly.
I think probably the key is, if we can show our viewers, if you see rarely the actually highest of popularity here of each of this leader. We had Margaret Thatcher, peak 48, Blair 52, 58. Look at the dates. None of these dates coincided with election. Gordon Brown, if he called election then, he probably would have won.
Which is when he bottled it.
Yeah, 2007
Yeah.
In October. But she is, the time of the election, on 61.
Yes, which is unprecedented for a Prime Minister to be going into a general election poll with such a huge sort of soaring popularity, not just staying static, although obviously, as you know, polls can be wrong. They were wrong at the referendum. They were slightly wrong before in terms of the last general election, where there was no way there was a prediction we were going to have a majority Conservative government. Having said that, to be going into a snap general election with that level of popularity...
Unprecedented.
It is unprecedented. We're hearing people now talking about seats. I mean, last night I was at an event with the Chancellor, First person I talked to talking about a majority of 100 seats, next person 150.
Yeah.
By the end of the evening, people were talking about a 200-seat majority.
Well, that probably haven't seen since 1931.
Exactly.
Well, okay, if we're going to speak about unexpected and something that might happen, you remember yesterday we were asking, where is Boris? Because Boris wasn't on the front bench. And here is Theresa May is dropping here a bombshell away. He's going to explode in a far land. Did you listen to his Mansion House speech where he's just sitting out?
And obviously he's also followed that up today with a tour of the TV studios. What he's largely been doing is exploiting the fact that Jeremy Corbyn has made some relatively unpopular decisions.
Well, his attack on Jeremy Corbyn, if we actually can show our viewers there, we found out what does it mean, you know. Everyone has to look it up,
I think what he's saying is, you know, don't look at this man as a kind of kindly old bearded gentleman that's not going to pose any great risk. Exactly. And the notion being behind this is that actually, you know, what he's trying to say is that Jeremy Corbyn is actually a threat to our national security in that he has been asked questions before about whether he'd be prepared to press the nuclear button, to shoot, to kill, all those things you need to do when you're in charge of the country.
But also, is Theresa May using him as a human shield? So
well, perhaps.
If he makes the gaffe, it'd be his gaffe.
Perhaps. And also, you know, OK, Boris Johnson can get away with making some of those kind of unsavoury statements that perhaps a Prime Minister wouldn't want to be making in terms of politicking around terrorism, for example, you know, the aggression from Russia, North Korea. I mean, all those things. But, you know, it is an effective, it's a very effective weapon to use, given that we have this opposition leader who seems to be not willing to, as Boris Johnson wants us to do, step up. He would rather step back.
Deflective Boris. Good point to go for a break. ابقى معنا. هيا نذهب إلى استراحة قصيرة نعود بعدها إليكم. إلى طائفتنا كرة. Right, we were discussing on the BT why she doesn't want to do the TV debate, and now the tactic. So the last PMQs, the last televised debate. Look at her actually tactic and the tactic of the opposition. He's been reading, he's been using that. But is he using Trump tactic, that I am the voice of people who have no voice?
He's trying to. I mean, this is the difficulty that he has, is that he's going back to his kind of austerity messages. He's talking about, you know, school funding, he's talking about pensions, he's talking about the NHS, which, to be fair, not just sort of Trump tactics in terms of trying to speak up for those with no voice, as you were saying, but they are fairly sort of standardised Labour messages, particularly around the NHS.
So he is actually moving the debate from the Brexit into what we normally have in election.
What we would be expecting from the Labour Party, as have we've seen during most general elections, is that the NHS becomes their key and core message, that basically the government is not spending enough money on health. The Prime Minister is trying to make it an election which is all about her, in actual fact, and him.
That's, you know, the coalition of course. Elect me, I'm strong, I'm stable. Have you counted? 37 times in 48 hours. I counted. She mentioned that 37 times in 48 hours.
Well, that's going to be the Linton Crosby message, isn't it?
Yes.
Like the last time we saw that the whole message was around this notion that there was going to be a coalition with the SNP and the Labour Party, and that was going to be a threat to our national security. This time the message is very much going to be that she is the only candidate capable of delivering strong, stable leadership. And that's going to be the message that we hear over and over and over again, in comparison to what he's going to be offering, which she's going to say is, as exactly as you say, this coalition of chaos, this notion that they don't actually know what they're going to be presenting.
Yes.
He says on one hand that he's
like
going
the cartoon,
to be...
he doesn't know what
exactly.
But speaking of tactics, I mean, the Labour was in disarray. Even the question that the whips would organise with disarray. Compare that to Angus Robertson, when he asked about pensions. What do you think of that tactics? He asked twice, because pensioners are actually, most of them would vote for Conservative.
Well, exactly. And the interesting thing about this, we've heard a lot about this triple lock, which is the thing in the UK which basically guarantees a particular high rate of pension for our pensioners. And the Conservative Party, as you rightly say, has been the party for older people. It's obviously gone after the grey vote, as we used to call it. Now, what I think we're seeing here, and the reason that they're pushing these buttons, and Angus Robertson is making this an election issue, having said that we haven't seen a manifesto yet, so we don't know what's going to be in it.
You see, I have to declare interest because I'm a pensioner.
Well, I understand that completely. But the issue around this is actually, are they going to now move their tactics? What she wants to do is very much park her tanks. If not park her tanks on Labour's front lawn, there are some people who say she's on the back lawn already.
Going to Wales. I mean, if the Labour lost seats in Wales, it will be the first time since 1931.
Exactly. And in Scotland as well, where they're going to make inroads up there too.
They're actually targeting Angus Robertson.
Yes.
You know, it's over the fishery policy, because a lot of fishermen there, I will just explain to our viewers, ليش تصيد السمك الاتحاد الأوروبي مأثر عليها. In the I think it was in the Sun or the Mirror, was one saying that Downing Street now going to row back on the triple lock, and then she might come up with it.
But it's quite a clever tactic, isn't it? Basically, you put it out there that it might be at risk.
Yeah.
You know, a bit like the tax lock as well. That's
right,
been the other suggestion, that they're going to ditch this tax lock, which basically means that the previous government pledged that we would not raise taxes in this Parliament. Philip Hammond came under quite a lot of fire at the weekend for suggesting that would be ditched. It's quite an interesting tactic that you put it out there that maybe this is in risk. You test the public mood, you test whether there's going to be a huge backlash against it, then you rein back from it, or you put it in. Yeah, exactly.
Now, and before we thank Carol, and finally, here is a young German girl called Hannah Steinker. Now, Hannah Steinker, her parents said she's too young to have a horse, so she trains a cow, and the cow is called Luna. And actually, Luna is quite obedient, and even she jumps there. So now she's going to, if the Americans have got cowboys, the Europeans are going to have a cowgirl.
Well, I have a great deal of sympathy for her parents when my little boy said to me the other day, after his first experience of horse riding, "Mummy, I want a horse." It's the thing you don't want to hear as a parent, the most expensive pursuit you could have. Maybe a cow's the answer.
Well, at least you get free milk.
Well, and they can mow the grass for me as well by eating it in the garden.
Two at the price of one.
Exactly.
We thank Carol Wheeler. Thank you very, very much for sharing your thoughts with us. هذا كل ما لدينا، ومتشكرين جدا على المتابعة، ونشوفكم الأسبوع الجاي إن شاء الله. إلى اللقاء.